Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending our parallel session with the title Hands-on Strategy Exchange, Human Rights Defenders and Civil Society Under Repression. We will be having a bit of different format today here because we realize that we've been sitting a lot in official panels for now 3 days. So, and I do think that this is the right time to tackle this topic, and that I can see some familiar faces in this room, but also some new one, and I'm really looking forward to actually receiving the inputs from all of you in the second part of our discussion today. So we are all coming from Western Balkan countries. So for years now, we are familiar with what repression is, but what we can monitor live nowadays is how the repression changes and how the tools used by autocratic governments are changing over time, and at the same time how human rights defenders are trying to adapt in the hostile environment that they are working in. So across the region, it's not only that we use different tools against human rights defenders, it's that the being an activist is being securitized by the governments in the entire region. And we need to have the strategy on how to fight it together in solidarity between ourselves. And I have to say that I'm seeing more and more solidarity within the civil society of each of our countries, but also cross-border cooperation. Today we have representatives of 3 Western Balkan countries. We have my colleagues from Serbia, from Montenegro, and from Bosnia and Herzegovina. And this is not by chance. It's actually initiated by Human Rights House Belgrade to try to gather colleagues from other human rights houses or potential human rights houses in the region. And this is why we only have half of the representation in this panel, which does not mean that we are not communicating with the colleagues from other 3 countries, Western Balkan countries. I will try to tackle the main challenges that human rights defenders are facing nowadays, and my distinguished colleagues will actually talk more on the concrete topics that we will be discussing, and they will try to collect as much of your intervention to these topics in order for us to go out from this panel with some recommendations or with at least some action points that we can all bring home with us to your own countries. So we can see smear campaigns which are designed to destroy the trust. So having the trust in someone who is trying to protect your rights is a basic element for the civil society to work. So this is usually the first step when the autocratic governments are trying to diminish the work of human rights defenders. But that is actually not all. We are facing the institutional data leaked directly to the tabloids. Sometimes we even find out that someone is being investigated or that someone has misused the funds or different kind of trust in tabloids and not by the official institutions. And we can see the unlawful investigations and how, for example, detention is used to deter further dissent, not only from organized civil society, but also for activists, journalists, and any active citizens in the region who actually wants to fight or who wants to bring the government to be more accountable for what they think that is misdoing at that moment. So there is this new generation of pressure, which I'm always referring to as a misuse of the legal framework against someone who is calling the governments to act in a legal way. So what is frequently happening is that activists are charged with charges against constitutional order. We are facing administrative harassments and announcements, or in some case even adoption of foreign agent legislation. And we will be talking a lot about this in the rest of the panel. And while all of this is happening, we are having something which is not anymore new happening, but it's actually becoming stronger and stronger, and that is the appearance of gongos, which are governmentally organized NGOs. So it's not only that you are being attacked for what you are actually doing, is that someone is pretending to do your job and to attack you from your own sector. So, and there is no clear way to prove that these are not the proper civil society, but let's say very organized tool against the civil society. So, not to take much of your time in my introduction and not to become a panelist in this session actually has two purposes. First is for you to listen what my colleagues actually have to say in the specific areas that they are expert in, and how the situation looks like in Serbia, Montenegro, and Bosnia and Herzegovina regarding the repression and the way that civil society is responding to it. And the second is to act and to actually, for you to bring something to us, and for all of us in this room to have something to take away from today's session. So I will actually not take any more time from you. I want to introduce my panelists today. We have Dejan Lučka, Director of Banjaluka Center for Human Rights from Human Rights House of Banjaluka, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Ivan Radulović, from Program Coordinator for Human Rights and Justice in Civic Alliance in Montenegro. Alma Mustajbašić, Public Policy Program Researcher at Civic Initiatives, my colleague from Human Rights House of Belgrade. And Tamara Filipović Stevanović, Secretary General at Independent Journalist Association of Serbia. My name is Jovana Spremo. I'm from Lawyers Committee for Human Rights, also part of Human Rights House of Belgrade. So, to start this first part, which will be like a regular panel, I would like to start from the hardest situation, I would say. Maybe not the hardest, given the situation in the streets in Serbia, but let's say the hardest in a legal means of how civil society is attacked. So, Mr. Lučka, you have documented the shrinking space for independent actors in Republika Srpska and in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And we are all aware that the Foreign Agent Act was, well, let's say, almost in power and sort of put aside for a while. So I would really like to hear what is currently happening with this act, and what are the consequences of the law who hasn't, well, let's say, started being implemented and which is stopped at some level, that is left on civil society, and how you are trying to fight this.
Okay, can you hear me? Oh, great. Thank you, Jovana. Easy question for the start. When I talk about shrinking space for civil society, for independent voices, for human rights defenders in Bosnia and Herzegovina, especially in Republika Srpska, I always say the most dangerous thing is not one single law, but the atmosphere that law creates, even if it is when it is struck down or withdrawn. A great example for this is Foreign Agents Act. First, it was pushed by the president and government of Republika Srpska. Then Ministry of Justice of Republika Srpska withdrawn it because enormous international pressure. But at the end, National Assembly of Republika Srpska adopted it. And after all that, Constitutional Court of Bosnia and Herzegovina declared that law unconstitutional. But we are still waiting a response from the Constitutional Court of Republika Srpska regarding this law. So on paper today you can say Foreign Agent Act is not currently in force. But it creates some kind of strange atmosphere in which anyone can say, okay, you receive foreign funding, you criticize our government, you are foreign mercenary, you are against our people, you are against our government, you are a traitor to your people, And Constitutional Court with one decision cannot annul that atmosphere in the public. Also, in Republika Srpska today, we now have a criminal code that reintroduced defamation as a crime. So if you are journalist, lawyer, activist, human rights defender, you can face criminal charges and pay fines for whatever you say or write. And when you combine that criminalization of defamation with this Foreign Agents Act, you get a perfect tool for silencing voices, perfect tool for repression from the government. So even though foreign agents law is not currently in force because of the Constitutional Court of Bosnia and Herzegovina, it creates a perfect way to silence critics, and it has already done two very bad things, in my opinion. Firstly, it normalized the idea that NGOs and human rights defenders in Republika Srpska are security problem. And secondly, it taught public officials that they can legislate NGOs out of existence and see how far they get. When we talk of other part of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, situation is not so bad. They do not have criminalization of defamation, they do not have Foreign Agents Act, but they have politicians with similar ideas. And in a couple of years, I can see that in Federation, we also get some kind of legislation that's which main goal is to attack NGOs and human rights defenders. That's general picture of this practice in Bosnia and Herzegovina. But when I talk about pressure from the government, real pressure is financial and administrative. Some organizations suddenly face random inspections, administrative procedures into every detail. So they cannot shut us down directly, but they can make our life pretty difficult. Also, if you are loyal to government, like loyalists in Serbia, you can achieve anything in the structure of Bosnia and Herzegovina, in the structure of Republika Srpska. But if you criticize the government, if you are against very bad laws that government produce, you are cut off. They do not invite you to consultations. They do not want even to talk to you, because for them, for government, you are a traitor. You are working against your people. But I think the most painful part in whole of this story is personal intimidation. In the research I've been doing with human rights defenders, lawyers, attorneys at law, activists in Bosnia and Herzegovina, I see very similar stories. Smear campaigns that targeted individuals and groups with those labels: mercenaries, LGBT lobby, traitors, etc., whatever fit the political message. And of course, a large sum of online hate speech, and nobody in institutions do not want to see that. They are quiet. So you are left alone in the wind, and you do not know what's next thing that can happen to you. And if you ask me, how are defenders adapting and staying safe? Well, I think under all of this pressure, defenders have had to become very creative just to keep working. Firstly, many of defenders now are legal experts, whether they like it or not. Many of organizations now have special funds for lawyers and costs of court, because in any time you can get some lawsuit against you. But I think that the hardest part is for organizations who reconsider to have a different type of organizations of themselves, or re-registering in different parts of Bosnia and Herzegovina. For example, someone who has his organization registered in Republika Srpska, for example, in basic court of Banjaluka, they are thinking about registering their organization now in some of the cantons of Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, or at the state level, because of this foreign agent law and penalties that it can produce. So to sum it up, I think that situation with activists, independent voices, and human rights defenders currently in Republika Srpska are just like in that series, Chernobyl, when the Yatlov say it's 3.6, not great, not terrible, but I think that situation now is below that line of 3.6, in particular in Republika Srpska, but also in whole Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Thank you, Dan. So the main message is actually that you are prevented of doing the job that you are meant to do, because you have to take care of yourselves, because you have to deal with your legal status and possible charges.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, let's go to a bit more bright, let's say, situation. I know that Montenegrins are always angry when we say it's the best situation that we have in the region. But I guess with political shifts, we get both openings and some uncertainties. So as a front runner in EU integration, what is the situation with civil society and human rights defenders in Montenegro at this point? Is it as bright as we can imagine, or there are some uncertainties that you are actually facing? And what the rest of the region can learn regarding the positive possible steps?
Can you hear me? Well, first of all, hello everyone. Just listening today, and I was thinking for myself, we actually do seem like super progressive compared to them. But situation, I mean, as of right now, Montenegro is going through a pretty dynamic period, especially when it comes to EU integration process. We do seem to be a front runner when it comes to EU accession. But then at the same time, we cannot forget that we have started or actually opened a few key chapters over a decade ago. I mean, in 2012, end of 2012, and I'm talking about specific chapters 23 and 24. And just to put that into perspective, compared to, let's say, Croatia, for closing those chapters, they needed a year and a half, and it took us a pretty long time. And now the questions that we from when I say we, I'm not only here on behalf of Civic Alliance, but as a representative of civil society from Montenegro. We usually criticize and ask questions about just the fact that even once we do become a EU member state, they're talking about 2028. which in my opinion is still I'm not pretty sure about that year. It may happen, but actually, are we ready to start implementing those laws? For instance, in last year, a set of different laws, really important laws, were adopted in 2024 and 25. And the question is, if we needed so many years before that, are we going to be ready? Because that the whole process was, in our opinion, and in my opinion, of course, was not transparent enough, and that's something that we have been pretty vocal about. It not being transparent enough, not having CSO representatives, and not only CSO representatives, but people who are experts in different fields, being present there in those working groups, which is something that we have talked a lot about. Especially first half of this year, there were also protests in Montenegro because of that situation, the whole process not being transparent enough. Then also, I was listening to what Dan said closely, and he was talking about Foreign Agents Act or law. Luckily, in Montenegro, a few political parties started that narrative last year, but luckily, many parties recognize it being pretty harmful, and were not willing to follow maybe Georgian model or a model from Republika Srpska, and nothing happened at the end. I mean, the law wasn't adopted, so implementation didn't happen at the end. But then again, at the same time, just what Dan said, that was a great point. Just a narrative about foreign agents in being there in Montenegro. It did us a great damage, because there are many people who are not educated in Montenegro, of course, and then if they watch and follow closely what their political party leader is talking about, I mean, just the whole narrative doesn't go through a thought process on a high level, so it's pretty harmful for us. But of course, compared to Republika Srpska, situation is much better. So our biggest concern is, and we now focus actually in my organization, I see many different organizations from Montenegro, we actually focus on what's going to happen the day after, once we do actually become European, we actually finish our EU integration process and we do become a member state. What's going to happen? Do we have enough people who are educated enough or are expert in a field to actually implement those laws, especially in those areas that I was talking about, judiciary, which in my opinion is one of the biggest concerns still to this day. I mean, usually when someone mentions Montenegro, there's a whole narrative about political change after 3 decades and 2020, where new leaders came all of a sudden. I mean, after 5 years, situation is not perfect, not as bad probably as and of course in Serbia we all know what's going on as of right now. So situation, I mean, we do seem to be front runners, but still there are many concerns, and lately it has become pretty hard to be an activist, I have to say. I mean, it's not only now, even in the past. I mean, if you criticize the process of not being transparent enough, then they try to present you as someone who's against new jobs for people, against. So it's been, and of course there is media backlash with that. So it's pretty challenging. There are many obstacles that we need to overcome on a daily basis, but at the same time, I mean, in Western Balkans, I mean, situation is pretty good compared to others. So, I mean, if someone was about to look up on to what we are doing right now, or if I was about to share something that can be useful for our colleagues from, or I mean, neighbors, it would definitely be the fact that these processes have to be more transparent, which are not in Montenegro as of right now. But I mean, once we do criticize them, then something changes from time to time. And just, I mean, Croatia, we try to, at least we from civil society, when I say we, I'm talking about activists, we usually try to focus on what happened in Croatia once they became a member state with NGOs there, because many NGOs actually disappeared after that. And situation, I'm afraid that the same scenario will happen in Montenegro, because many organizations, even now, with lack of funds and funding from European Union and other funds, I mean, it's seems like it will happen in Montenegro, because many NGOs actually were, I mean, their scope of work was actually focused on EU integration process. So once we do become member, I'm pretty afraid that many NGOs will disappear. Thank you.
Yeah, this is the example on how the NGOs are always under the threat. Nevertheless, the system is, let's say, ready or not to say that they have the rule of law present. So I want to switch to the dark side again a bit. And Alma, I mentioned in the introduction the problem of gongos appearing more and more. Not only in Serbia but in the region also as another tool against the civil society that is working especially on the issues of human rights, judiciary, anti-corruption, election monitoring. So how does this affect the trust of the people in the work of the NGOs, but also what is the ability of the real CSOs to fight against them, basically?
Thank you, Jovana. Yes, as you said, Gongo organizations have been spreading in recent years in Serbia. And alongside them, we have another phenomenon of phantom organizations. So basically, organizations that exist only on paper. And such organizations, of course, have a harmful impact on the development of a thriving civil society. And even in the strategy for creating enabling environment, the existence of gongos was recognized as one of the factors contributing to public's negative perception of civil society. Even though I have to say that the strategy does not recognize other, maybe more important factors, such as public smear campaigns conducted by government officials. And basically, there are two main goals of these organizations. So firstly, they simulate support to the authorities and to their initiatives. And the second aim of Gongos is to apply for public funding. So in a way to access the budget funds, state funds, and receive money in this corrupt way, which of course has many different negative consequences for real civil society organizations. Many real CSOs, let's call them real, many real CSOs have already decided to completely give up on applying for public funds because they know that this money will be allocated to gongos and to phantom organizations. So basically to organizations that either don't exist or, on the other hand, they don't have enough experience or expertise in the areas that they apply for. And this have impact on financial stability of civil society organizations who are already struggling in these terms and in this sense. And I'll just remind the audience about the research that BIRN and Civic Initiatives did in 2021 when it was discovered that more than 5 million euros was allocated through public open calls of just one ministry to phantom organizations. So these have different negative aspects, and I really hope that we will discuss them later in our group work. But I'll just have to mention that this raises question about the quality of services provided to the end users. And if we talk about budget funds that go to media, what about disinformation? Because we know that the organizations who receive money on media, public open calls, are those who are pro-regime oriented, and many of them are part of the smear campaigns. And so, as for the other aspect and other aim of Gongos, so this simulating dialogue and support for the authorities, Gongos create this false image, this illusion of open and robust civil society by participating in different working groups and in government bodies responsible for drafting public policies and documents. They create this illusion of open and democratic processes, and it only fuels the authorities to present themselves to international community as open and transparent and inclusive in these processes, and as fulfilling the demands usually set up by the European Union. And this also raises other questions about the quality of documents adopted and whether they actually serve the public interest and the directly affected communities. And if you exclude real CSOs, you exclude experience, knowledge, you in areas that you mentioned in your questions. So you exclude different authentic voices, and you draft and adopt policies that only serve the current government and their political interest. And I just want to add another dimension of Gongo's role in Serbia specifically. Many of them are now actively participating in smear campaigns against real CSOs, against activists, against students, citizens, and critically oriented media. And to sum up this part, so if Gongos continue to grow and to spread, it will leave CSOs isolated and endangered. And what is most important is that critical issues will be left out of the table and out of the discussion. So civil society organization will find it increasingly difficult to fulfill their purpose, and I think they will have to find a way of different ways of participating in public dialogue and public debate, which I think in Serbia is already happening for years now, not necessarily because of the existence of Gongos, but we know that many organizations at the beginning of this year decided to completely withdraw from the cooperation with the government and state institutions, because we do not see that these processes are really open and transparent and democratic, and we don't want to be used just as, tokens, so someone can say, yes, we consulted with CSOs, but we actually didn't take into account their suggestions. And what CSOs can do, well, I feel like what is left for real civil society organization is their work on the field and their activities and their communication directly with communities, because this is the best way that citizens can recognize who is actually doing the work and who is actually helping to improve the local areas and public interest. And of course, it is necessary to maintain transparency in your work, and to connect with other relevant CSOs and to try to recognize and to point out to Gongo's activities. And there are many different examples of coalition who are already doing this. For example, in Serbia, that's OKO coalition, or Openly About Public Open Calls, which is consisted of many different organizations from the local level as well. And these organizations are actively in their everyday work pointing out to Gongo activities on the local level.
Okay. Thank you, Alma. And to conclude this part of the panel, Tamara, journalists are oftenly, let's say, together with the activists, students, and the critical voices, the most targeted profession in Serbia that we have. So it's from smear campaigns to online harassment, even physical attacks, which we could see in the last several protests. So how does this smearing and disinformation and propaganda actually contribute additionally to the shrinking space, and what kind of responses journalists can offer to that have proven as effective at this kind of atmosphere that we are living in, and do journalists and NGO work together to solve this? And I will have to say that you have 5 minutes because we need to give the space for the audience.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. So the journalists community, real journalists, professional journalists, they're human rights defenders. So not all journalists are in the same position like activists and other thinkable people, but these professional journalists who are doing their job in public interest, they are really under the pressure and under the attack. So my organization, we are monitoring the pressures, threats, and physical attacks on journalists from 2008, and this year, it's not at the end of the year, but until the end of October, we registered in more than 300 cases in our database. So more than 90 cases were physical attacks on journalists while they were performing their job. 116 death threats or very serious threats to their life. So their safety is under the threat heavily. So what we are doing as a journalist association, we are trying now, we are gather the protective gear for journalists, like helmets, like protective vests, because they are in danger when they go out to do their job, to report from the protests. So this is the most, this is the worst year from 2008 regarding the situation and safety of journalists in our country. So the smear campaigns, that is how we are thinking about smear campaigns as a pressure, which is not so big thing comparing what is happening currently here. But that is actually the way how the journalists became a target of physical attacks. So the smear campaign is one step to the death threats, to the physical attack on journalists. And who is the victim of these smear campaigns? That is the journalists who are doing their job professionally, which are that is mostly investigative journalists. And how it starts? It starts when they are published something in public interest. Then in 24 or 48 hours, you have a smear campaign in tabloids. So it's starting from the tabloids. And after that, the politicians actually are taking this narrative also, that they are not answering the questions what was the topic of the investigative article, for example, but then they are insulted on personal basis journalists. And you said at the beginning, the aim of these smear campaigns and disinformation campaigns are actually to make media less trustworthy. And then when you do not have a trust, then you do not have a society. So it's very, very dangerous game. And then there is also on online campaigns. It's going from the tabloids to the politicians, then to the social networks, and then you have the trolls and these bots army, which are attacking journalists. And in that case is also pretty often we have the death threats, doxing of journalists. That is also something which is very common. So these people are really do a very hard job for the citizens, for the public interest, and then their life is now they are threatened on daily basis. But still, I think it's important to have these journalists, professional journalists, because we saw that in the crisis, the trust in media raises in these trustworthy media, So, for example, if you compare, we have some Reuters digital news report for this year. You can see there that people trust to the media who are professional. So N1 has 49% of Serbian people trust to the N1, and 21% trust in Informer, for example. So you see that when the crisis is rising, people need reliable information, people need professional journalists who will give them reliable information which they will use for their personal decisions. What we can do as a journalistic community, what we are doing, as I said, we are dealing with legal cases. We are 24 hours open for our members, and not just for our members, but also for all journalists who are in need, who need legal help or any kind of advice. There is also the psychological support to the journalist, free of charge representation before the court, then this protective gear, and of course the solidarity to give the statement, to make publicly the case of the journalist, because institution doesn't work. So the only how to say the only way to protect yourself is to make your case public, because in that case if something happened to you, you can at least say, okay, I told you so.
And this is a perfect introduction to the second, more interactive part of this panel. So we have actually highlighted several issues that human rights defenders and civil society want to bring to the attention of broader communities, being it international community, our peers from other countries, or journalists that are present at this moment. So for the next 15 minutes, our 4 panelists will actually become facilitators of a very small discussions of maybe 5 or 6 people in this room. So I will now read the topics that they will be discussing with you, so you can like change your seat in the room if you want to speak more with a specific panelist on the issue. And then afterwards, they will come back to report on what was discussed in the smaller groups in order for us to have as much of your inputs as we couldn't get by just having 3 or 4 questions at the end of this panel. So, Mr. Dejan Lučka will be on the, let's say, this front right part of the hall. And you can discuss on security of human rights defenders, being it legal or different kind of formats that we can actually use to protect ourselves. On my left side here, there will be Tamara Filipović, with whom you can discuss disinformation and smear campaigns. Alma will be in the upper corner, discussing gongos and manipulated civic space. And even as a bright side of this panel, will be speaking with you on regional cooperation and solidarity, and he will be somewhere close to the techniques, I guess, in the upper part of the room. So I will just ask the panelists to spread in the room, and then you can just like join different specific discussions that you would like. And I will remind you when it's 10 minutes past and when it's 15 minutes to come back. Okay, so for this last 10 minutes that we have, I will actually have my panelists debrief from the small discussions. So each of you will have 2 minutes. And I will say in which order, because let's say that will be a logical one. So, Alma, what kind of discussion and conclusions you could make in the, the most effective and smallest group that we had?
Yeah. Well, we discussed in our small group different aspects of gongos, and we discussed if it would be efficient to have criteria for recognizing gongos, even though there are some publications that are dealing with this issue. but also important point was made that maybe it's better to give a definition of what NGO is rather than what a Gongo is, because it's maybe a tricky field to define and to recognize who is Gongo and who is not. But it was because we had representatives of international community as well in our group. It was important to them that different voices are included in the conversations. So and that maybe not all who agree with the government are necessarily Gongo organizations. Which it depends on the country that we are talking, and it is also important for international community to recognize which organizations are Gongos and which are not, because when they engage with different actors in our countries, when they engage with civil society, it's important to them to do the research and to know who they will speak with. So yeah, maybe the main point was to establish the definition of what an NGO is, to track record and to find this way as maybe more efficient than to have a list of Gongos in one country.
Definitely, yes, and it's a quite important message for the international community, because when you engage with Gongo not knowingly, you can easily provide legitimacy to the fake organization that they are, basically. So I want to continue with the security of human rights defenders. So what did you talk about, and what is the thing to bring home with us?
Well, we talked about different things. So from the possible international pressure to the idea that we need some special mechanisms in protection of human rights defenders, like free legal aid and similar stuff that we have in some of our organizations. But at the end of discussion, representative from Albania say one great and very interesting thing, and I think that's something we don't talk about enough, and that's that we must try to care of each other mental health, because constant attacks, lawsuits, pressure, fear can cause burnout and depression. So we need to see more peer support, more specialized institutions who can give advices to human rights defenders in this sense. We need more safe spaces for human rights defenders. And I think we need just simple things like let's meet, talk, and I think remind ourselves why we started this work in the first place.
Thank you. That is a very, very good takeaway that you concluded, actually, that taking care of yourself will actually bring the bigger picture and bring protection to the entire group. So the disinformation part, takeaways?
Yeah, we have some conclusions. So we have some takeaways, actually. What we said, it's very important to have more media literate people. So the public needs more media literacy to increase their media literacy, and then they will not be, how to say, attacked by the smear campaigns. So they will know how to recognize that. That is one way. Then the internationalization of our problems, and to make public these stories about disinformation and smear campaigns is also something which can protect people. Solidarity is one of the most important things. So we were discussing that journalists, for example, they are often do not want to become a news, because they are those who are making the news. So they are not happy when they are becoming a news. And there is a possibility for solidarity that some other people, some other journalists and some other media can report about it, and to dig deeper and make a story about these disinformation campaigns and smear campaigns. And that's also regarding the online channels and the online actually social networks. We were discussing that there is some ideas on the international level that journalist associations, journalist organizations in media, they should have some kind of escalating channel to the big tech platforms to protect their content, but also when it comes to these smear campaigns, that they have some kind of not special treatment, but special connection with the big techs, and that is also the way how we can make these smear campaigns and disinformation campaigns do not exist, but to make it at least to decrease.
To decrease the pressure.
To decrease, yeah, the numbers of these disinformation campaigns. So that is 4 takeaways from our discussion.
Okay. And to conclude with some
Positive.
more positive area, the regional cooperation and solidarity.
Well, even though we were actually short on time, we had a great discussion. Unfortunately, I didn't get to hear each and every single colleagues who were in group together with me. Actually, a few of them who were talking had a great points. My colleague from Montenegro, she had a great point. Even though when it comes to cooperation between NGOs, let's say from Montenegro and other specific Western Balkans countries, it usually goes as smooth as possible when it comes to NGOs. But then again, she reminded me of something that happens to even to our organization and myself. So we do have a great communication and cooperation with NGOs, but then those NGOs usually don't have or sometimes they don't have a good or smooth relationship and communication with their institutions, which is problem even for us, and then we try to reach out to their institutions. So that's something that we should be focusing on in the future. And also a colleague from Kosovo had a great point. Usually it's country to country cooperation. So let's say Montenegro, NGO from Montenegro and NGO from Kosovo, we had a good communication, but then we should, even when writing projects and applying for different calls, we should try to focus on initiatives that will gather together youth or people from different countries of Western Balkans, not only from, let's say, Montenegro and Kosovo, but other from Kosovo, Serbia, Bosnia, so that we can share knowledge and experiences. And we should be focusing on youth, because there are not very many, I mean, there are, but not too many, at least in Montenegro, initiatives in that way. Also, one of colleagues mentioned church on here. That's even in Montenegro. That's a pretty big question, and many problems go alongside with that. I mean, we really don't have time to go too deep into that now. Maybe in this part after the panel, which is not as formal as panel, we can discuss. I mean, if I start talking about that right now, we'll probably be here for at least an hour. So, I mean, it's as you said, it's a positive message for the end. I mean, more of a maybe at least my opinion is, and what we do, we usually try to for those initiatives maybe sign different memorandums of cooperation with different organizations or institutions from different countries, which actually gives us different obligations that we have to fulfill in a period of time, which actually force us to do things and together and think about different initiatives.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we are super with our allocated time for this event, and I will use this opportunity because I'm chatting with my LLM now with all the conclusions that we had in this last intervention. So I have very clear a message to read to all of you that we have jointly came up with in this panel. And this is that we need to distinguish credible NGOs from gongos, and international actors should rely on clear criteria of independence, transparency, and proven community trust. We need to strengthen protection mechanisms for human rights defenders, including legal aid, mental health support, safe spaces, and coordinated responses to disinformation. And this remains essential for safeguarding civic freedoms. And despite regional challenges, cooperation among Western Balkans NGOs continues to function well, especially when cross-border youth initiatives and solidarity between media, civil society, and citizens help bypassing institutional obstacles and therefore resist smear campaigns. So, I will leave you all with this, I would say, 4 main messages that we are taking from this panel, and invite you to take the coffee break now, so you can actually attend the next panels. And thank you all for being today with us and choosing this topic among the others.